Welcome to the Opportunity Podcast, where entrepreneurs come to learn from real buyers, sellers, and industry experts on the lesser-known growth opportunities to build their online business empires. We'll uncover tactics veteran online business entrepreneurs have used to build, buy, flip, and sell their way towards personal wealth. Sit back, grab a coffee, and get ready to uncover hidden growth secrets. The Opportunity Podcast starts now.
Welcome back to the Opportunity Podcast, your go-to resource for hitting growth opportunities throughout online business. We're your hosts. I'm Brandon.
And I'm Sarah, and thanks for joining us for our latest episode.
Today, we will be speaking with Doug Cunnington, the owner of Niche Site Project and host of The Doug Show and Mile Hi-Fi podcasts, and also the owner of his popular self-titled YouTube channel. Doug explains how he discovered the fascinating world of affiliate marketing while he was working as a management consultant back in 2013, and after being laid off from his job in 2015, decided to work full-time on his online side projects. Doug explains the roadmap he took to diversifying his portfolio of sites and how he made the shift into owning the actual products and services, which offered much better margins on his returns. He also gives us a behind-the-scenes look at what has worked for him over the years when building affiliate content sites and why you shouldn't focus on scaling your business too early. Instead, focus on building a solid foundation for your business based on what is currently working and driving the most traffic is a code that he's been living by.
That's right, Brandon, but we won't give away too much just yet, so let's dig into the interview and see what Doug has to share. And then at the end of the episode, we'll go over some common questions online business owners face and what you can learn from them. Let's get started.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Opportunity Podcast. We have a very special guest on the call with us today. It is Doug Cunnington, and he runs his own popular YouTube channel and also the owner of Niche Site Project. So welcome to the podcast, Doug, and how are you doing today?
I'm pumped to be here. Thanks so much for having me. And yeah, it's a great day here.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, you sound super pumped. And Sarah and I were talking before this. Really excited to have you on. You put out such great and amazing content. So we were really excited to get you on the call and kind of pick your brain, I guess, a little bit. But for our listeners that are not as familiar with you or some of your content, why don't you introduce us to yourself and where you are currently in the world?
Sure. Well, thanks again. Appreciate the compliments there. I run Niche Site Project, which is a blog, and I have a couple podcasts and a YouTube channel, and kind of accidentally got into niche sites and affiliate marketing and all that kind of stuff after finding the Smart Passive Income podcast. And that was back in 2013, and I didn't know anything about this world. And in fact, thought it all sounded a little bit scammy. I didn't know what to make of it, but sort of dove in head first and really got obsessed. And I was doing management consulting at the time, working for Accenture, which a lot of people may have heard of. And I didn't really like the job too much, but I got a good paycheck and I learned a lot. And I just kept dabbling on the side. And after a couple of years in 2015, I got laid off working for a different company at that point and decided to try to take that, side hustle full time, which was pretty scary. But here we are several years later, and I absolutely love it. Currently located in the Longmont, Colorado area, which is pretty close to Boulder. It's kind of a cool area for financial independence and stuff like that. There's a lot of bloggers and well-known people in this town, which is a fairly small town.
That's so cool. I didn't realize that so many of bloggers would have congregated to that place. We just spoke to someone earlier today in Chiang Mai, which happens to be like the sort of epicenter for SEOs. So it's interesting how people kind of pick a place and just move there.
Yeah. And I was going to say I had some good friends, business partners, and some other folks that went to Chiang Mai for a while and stayed for a bit. And yeah, it's pretty amazing how folks will congregate. And we ended up here in Longmont sort of by accident. My wife got a job down in Boulder, and then it just happened to be a place where, have you guys heard of Mr. Money Mustache?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So he lives in town, and there's a couple other well-known folks locally, which, like I said, it's a fairly small town. There's a little main street, and just turns out there's some cool bloggers that live like down the street.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, that's
He was
awesome.
the first person that came to mind as soon as you said that and said bloggers living there. And I was like, I wonder if, lo and behold, that's amazing. Very cool. Well, for your time being in this industry over the years, I'm sure a lot has gone on and kind of landed in a place. It seems like you've landed in a pretty positive place with it now. I'm curious, what has made you stick with affiliate marketing over the years despite the obstacles? Because obviously we know there's loads of up and downs in the industry. So what was about it that made you just want to hang in there and made you love it after all this time?
When I first got started, I actually got the old Empire Flippers, like AdSense ebook. And that was one of the first things that got me rolling. And I never got AdSense working very well, but the Amazon affiliate model did work really well for me. So that was like my first success. And maybe it's a combination of stubbornness and laziness, but I just stuck with that and kept iterating on the same sort of business model over and over again. And hopefully I've gotten better over time. Now, that said, while I've stuck with affiliate marketing primarily and didn't, dabble in, say, drop shipping or fulfilled by Amazon FBA or lead generation or so many other business models, from the beginning, I kind of wanted to make sure I was a little bit diversified. So I've always had my own products. I've always built an email list. I've started a podcast and the YouTube channel along the way. So there were sort of pieces that I've added over time so that with the ups and downs with affiliate marketing, I've had diversification from the very beginning. Now, believe me, it slowed everything down. I made much slower progress, but at the same time, it did give me the opportunity to feel a little bit more secure, a little bit less risk, especially with having an email list and having products that are my own where the margins are extremely high. And I think it's a great business model to just have a diversified sort of portfolio. Although, again, I want to caution people, you don't necessarily have to diversify from the beginning. It was just a thing that I did maybe ignorantly.
I appreciate that advice. We've talked to different guests on this show about just being able to, when you're sort of getting started, making sure you don't overdo it or just sprint into a particular direction because you think you need to do it. Do it when you're ready, do it when it feels right for the business. It sounds like it worked out for you early on. But like you said, it's not necessarily the advice you're giving everyone, despite sort of not taking into account where they are. So I think that's really good advice. We've had a lot of different people on in the kind of affiliate, Amazon associate space. And I feel like there's always an interesting conversation around, the sort of the love-hate relationship with Amazon affiliates. And I was kind of wondering, what would be your personal take on the pros and cons of the program?
Yeah, I definitely love hate. And it's sort of one of those relationships where you're just sticking with it because you don't know what else to do in some ways. But going into the pros and cons very directly, everyone probably knows Amazon has such a huge market share. It's sort of a no-brainer. Even if you don't want to work with Amazon, so many people make their purchases. The friction is so low. It's so easy for me to hop on, my phone, look up a product and just order. And depending on what time of day, I mean, it can show up in under 24 hours. So it's just so convenient. With that volume, like I said, a no-brainer to just have it as part of your monetization if you can fit it into your niche. Now, the cons, well, there's quite a few, and we can clearly point out in 2017 and 2020, Amazon cut the commission rates effectively, anywhere between 30 to 50%, depending on what you were earning before and the kind of products and the categories of your products. So with that out of your hands, which, I mean, that's really the case with any affiliate program. The problem with Amazon is we don't have any leverage as individual affiliates, or even if we somehow banded together, there's not really much leverage we have. Now, back in the day, maybe Amazon needed affiliates a little bit more, but I don't get that feeling these days anymore, especially, coming out of the pandemic. Amazon grew so much, and it's unfortunate that that's sort of how the relationship has gone. But I often say, as long as you have traffic, like you have some leverage, you can figure out how to monetize it. It may not be as lucrative as it used to be back in the day, But if you do have the traffic, you should be able to figure out something to do with it to make money. So Amazon, it could be tough. The trend has been to cut those commission rates, and who knows what the future will hold. There's always rumors about, changes coming up. But another thing I'll point out is the international associates program. So Amazon is, expanding, and they're going to more countries, and there's this Amazon associate programs for those countries. And sometimes you get a much more favorable commission rate, kind of like the old days. So I'm not sure exactly, what to do with Amazon, but I think the fact that there's so many people that order, it's hard to not have them as part of your monetization strategy.
Yeah, no, it's a very interesting take because, even with these commission updates and, a lot of the revenue that a lot of content site and niche site builders were generating at that time is dropped, as you had mentioned, 30-50%. It's still interesting that you're still saying, no, it's still something that you should include in your business. It's still something that, offers that frictionless checkout for your customers that are going through your website, gaining that information and then going on to Amazon. So yeah, it's interesting. I guess you're not saying necessarily get away from Amazon, but you're also saying it should be included in your business model somewhere. And that kind of leads me into my next question as far as what you've learned over the years, even outside of Amazon, I guess, but what has really helped you scale your content sites, and what have you found really moves that needle for you in your favor the most?
I think this could be sort of cliche or obvious, but just doing more of what's working well for your individual business model or your individual site. So I just started a new site about a year ago, and I was hoping to make more sales with the affiliate business model, but the traffic wasn't going to those pages. I had a lot of informational topics that were ranking much better. So instead of, necessarily trying to push that boulder uphill, I decided to just publish more of the content that was already doing well, similar topics, and just lean into what was working. And again, it may sound obvious, do a little bit more of what's working, do a little bit less of what's not working, but it's really easy to not do that. It's really easy for me to think, oh, you know what? Like that business model of affiliate reviews is what's worked, and I'm just going to keep trying to do that even harder, even though for that particular site, it's just not ranking right now. Now I think I'll be able to turn it around. And I already see that in, when I'm out of the sort of year sandbox period, things are sort of picking up on the affiliate keywords. But at the same time, at some point, I realized, all right, I just need to lean into what's working here. So as far as scaling, I think another really important thing is don't scale too early. And I made this mistake, like a lot of people do. I got excited. Like I said, I found smart passive income. I started thinking of new ideas, and I thought, well, I better buy that domain name. I better try to, get that site started. And there's only so much we could do. At the time, I was working full time, and I barely had time to work on one site. Also, I didn't know what I was doing. So I was trying to, build out 3 or 4 other sites, and I was making silly beginner mistakes, not just on one site, but on 4 sites. So I was sort of scaling this inefficiency, which is just a bad idea. So that's one thing I always try and caution people on as well is don't scale. Don't try to expand until you've figured out how to do it one time. You're just going to amplify your inefficiency. You're going to amplify any mistakes that you're making. And to be really granular too, and this happened to me, so hopefully I can save people this sort of grief, but I published a lot of content on, say, 3 or 4 sites. And I published, we'll just say like 10 articles. I'm going to get lost in my own math here in a second. But basically, I published like 40 or 50 articles across several different sites. And I made, a mistake in the formatting, for example. And essentially, I made that mistake over and over again, all over the place. So it takes time to fix it. So I've essentially magnified and amplified that specific problem instead of figuring it out early on one site. And then when I scale, I'm not I don't feel bad and I'm not wasting time trying to fix it across multiple sites.
Yeah, I like that. And I'm sure a lot of our listeners are kind of in that same boat where they have this, I guess as entrepreneurs, we have it, across the board where it's the shiny object syndrome and, oh, this new niche is really hot right now. It's a lot of great volume for it and not as much competition. So let me build one of these and let me go dabble in this niche as well. It's another sub niche. And, I think the focus should be on honing in on your core site or your core niche site and topic and really optimizing that to the best of your ability. And I think that's what we kind of get lost in, that shiny object syndrome. We're trying to do everything all at once. And as you had mentioned, that only magnifies the issues that you have to go and fix across multiple sites if you've done the wrong process in the meantime. Through the years of building these affiliate sites and these niche project sites as well, what would you say has been your greatest challenge as an affiliate marketer, and how were you able to overcome that?
In 2013, I got a pretty quick start. Actually, I think I hit like my first $6,000 month within 6 months. Times were different back then. So I know it's a little harder to do that, especially if you're brand new. It takes a little longer to rank. And I thought it was always going to be that easy, I guess. And the thing that I learned here was how to adapt and how to be flexible. So unfortunately, things were different back then, but there were still manual penalties. And some of the folks that I was learning from, we were doing things that Google didn't like. So it was private blog networks, which are still effective in some ways, but I got away from that around this time period. And basically, my site got penalized. The one did so well really quickly. And I went from, earning a lot of money to essentially zero. So almost, 99% of the traffic left due to that penalty. So I had to figure out what to do. It was pretty fun to, rise quickly, but you can also run into the opposite issue. So I thought, hey, I'm going to launch another couple sites here and essentially try to do the exact same thing. I was very new. I mean, it was under a year and I wasn't sure how to recreate the success. And I launched another couple sites. They were penalized a little bit faster than the first one. And then I think I even did it one more time. So that was, really challenging. And the thing that sort of came out of it is I looked at my approach and, like hopefully slightly logical person, I realized, all right, that didn't work 3 times in a row. So I should probably change what I'm doing. And one of those items was to stop using the private blog networks, especially as sloppy as we were doing back in 2012, 2014 timeframe. And then the other part is I was also targeting these higher search volume, sort of higher competition keywords. And what came out of this, like being flexible and trying to adapt, was the keyword golden ratio. And that's something I'm sure we're going to talk about coming up. But I think, without those issues, without the challenges, without me trying to figure out what do I need to do different, how can I try to really pull a 180 here on how I was failing multiple times in a row, and how can I do something different? And like I said, and that sort of spawned the keyword golden ratio.
Awesome. Well, let's dig into that then. Talk to me about the keyword golden ratio. What does it take to implement this correctly?
Sure. So hopefully we can link up to videos and other documentation. I'll do my best to explain it verbally, which sometimes is challenging, but it's a data-driven way to find keywords that are underserved on the internet. So you use an advanced Google search command called all in title, and you search for your keywords that way. So maybe you find, I'll just use an example. I'm not very creative, so I'll just look at this wireless mouse on my desk here. So maybe you look for the best wireless mouse for travel, and you would, find the search volume for that. And the keyword golden ratio is the all in title results divided by the search volume, where the search volume is under 250. Again, if you check out the YouTube demos or any of the other blog posts around this, it makes a lot more sense. And what you're looking for is a ratio of under 0.25. And essentially what that means is there's more people searching for that search phrase than there are results on the internet. So there's a lot more people looking for it than there is information about it. It's not bulletproof. It's one of the tools in our toolbox here. And I think that's one thing to point out if folks are familiar with the concept, or maybe you've heard people say that it's a bad idea, or maybe hopefully they say it's a good idea. But the keyword golden ratio, or KGR, is a great tool to help you find low competition, long tail keywords. So a lot of people might get the impression that I'm really dogmatic and I only use keyword golden ratio terms, but that's just not true at all. It's, a great way to get brand new sites traffic early on. And the goal here is you're finding things that are such low competition that you're able to rank in, sometimes a few hours, under 24 hours, sometimes in the top 20, sometimes in the top 10. And to implement it well, you need to, find these keywords and treat it sort of as a volume approach. So I would say you at least need to try, 20 to 30 of these keywords. And it's really important, just like any keyword, to search on Google after you find a keyword that might be a good one and it meets the KGR criteria. You should still Google it and have a look. Look at the results. If you see all YouTube videos, for example, it might not be a good one to go after if you're not publishing a YouTube video. And Google's telling you right there that people want to see a YouTube video as the result. Or maybe you search, all the results are e-commerce sites like Walmart, Target, Amazon. And if you have an affiliate site, there's a strong chance that you're not going to rank if all the other results are some other kind of site that is not yours. So, like I said, a volume approach usually is good. Some of these are not going to work out perfectly. Some are going to exceed your expectations. And I think for people that have published blog posts and they haven't been able to rank for, sometimes years, maybe they have hundreds of posts and they're not ranking really for anything, try the keyword golden ratio. A lot of times people are going after search phrases that are way too competitive for where their site is at that time. And if you go after a KGR term, chances are you're going to have a much better chance to rank.
That's awesome. The idea of being able to rank that quickly, potentially in a day, is fascinating. And like you said, it's such a good tactic to use when you're new and you're just, you're hungry to be ranking. I love that perspective. I guess switching gears a little bit, so that sounds like a really good tactic for those who are trying to rank or to grow fast. But how about for people who, let's say they've hit a wall with their site and they can't seem to grow up more, things have plateaued. What advice would you give them to get unstuck?
I guess a strategy that we used a lot back in the consulting days, but it's sort of universal and people can look up how to do this, but it's called a gap analysis. And it's fairly simple. You look at where your site is currently, you think about where you want it to be in the future, and then you look at the gap and you create a plan to close the gap. It forces you to sort of analyze, like I said, where your site is and sort of imagine what it could be in the future. Through that, you will often find that perhaps you've neglected certain areas. And I've seen this a lot, been guilty of it myself, where maybe you've had good success just publishing content and you don't do any promotion or link building. You're literally just publishing. Maybe you get a few links here and there. And it turns out a lot of people don't like to build links, or they haven't spent the time in the trenches to figure out how to do it effectively. So they just don't build any links. So I encourage people to go through a sort of a gap analysis, look at your site, and then also think about areas that you know that you should work a little bit harder in and perhaps fix those things up. Now, there's agencies that can help you with content or link building or nearly anything that you need. So it doesn't mean you necessarily have to figure out how to do a shotgun skyscraper campaign and learn all the software and stuff like that. But you could hire companies to do that sort of thing. So overall, I would say if you've hit a wall, take a good look at what you've worked on. And if you've perhaps hit a wall where you're doing pretty good. Let's say you're making $12K a month. You might have to shift some of your efforts. So whatever got you to that point is not going to take you to the next level. You may have to build a bunch of links and really work on that area. Vice versa, right? Sometimes people don't publish as much content and they have a lot of links going to their site because that's an area they have a lot of interest or skill. So maybe they need to publish a lot more content and fill the gap in the other direction. So I think that's probably one of the biggest things where people just work on the stuff that they want to, which honestly, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, we should work on things we enjoy, but if they have hit a wall and they're trying to figure out how to get out of that plateau area, they may have to work on some things that either they don't love or they have to figure out how to solve that problem, the area that they've neglected over time.
Yeah, I like that. And I guess we're all kind of masters of a certain core skill set, and we tend to lean in on what we're really good at and try to outsource other operations of the business. And that kind of leads into the next question. And I wanted to take actually a few steps back when you had mentioned your beginning sites and publishing 40 or 50 articles on each of the sites when you were first starting. I wanted to ask you, were you writing a lot of that content yourself, or did you outsource that content to writers or freelancers?
I wrote almost all of it probably the first year or so.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's quite a bit of content to put out and writing it yourself. And do you still take that same approach today where you're still producing a lot of your own content, or have you now started to outsource that content to freelancers?
I outsource almost everything now. Yeah, I've gotten out of the writing trenches as much. I'm a very slow writer and I'm a slow typer too, just to really dig into that.
Hand in hand, yeah.
Yeah, so it takes me a long time, but I do occasionally write outlines, and that helps the writers a lot to really just set expectations on both sides so they perhaps do as much research or thinking and they can focus on their craft of writing. And, like I said before, I'm podcasting a lot, so I'm talking a lot more than I'm writing, which is just a little bit faster for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess that does lead into my next question for you as well. I wanted to get on that subject of building up a content team. So what approach do you take when it comes to building up a powerful content team as far as outsourcing writers? And where do you find these writers to help you grow your affiliate sites?
So typically I'm hiring from Upwork. So if I'm building a team from scratch, which I actually prefer to build a team from scratch and hire individual freelancers, and I'll describe the way I sort of set up a team. But before I get into the details, I'll brag a little bit, I guess, or I'll tell you about my experience. Maybe it's not bragging. So
Nice.
I hired and interviewed a lot of people in my consulting days. I built teams and I dealt with onboarding and, teams of, 10 or 15, but also a team of over 100. And I interviewed probably, I don't even know, hundreds of people, dozens of people, looked through resumes, and really had to spend a lot of time figuring out how to onboard people in an efficient way to make sure that they could hit the ground running and all that stuff. So that's definitely one of the skills that I learned over time and very valuable. I mean, there's a lot of things that I didn't like about the corporate world, but you can learn a lot at scale and learn from people that have a lot more experience than you. And that's really what I did. So I took a lot of those ideas to my team and my teams whenever I built them up. So number one, I would say, if you're thinking, hey, I want to build my team, start slow, start small. Kind of goes back to the thought before, where if you're scaling, you're trying to do a little too much before you have the skills yet, you're going to sort of magnify any issues that you may have. Now, step back, that could be a little valuable if you're able to expose your inefficiencies, but you don't want to get stressed out. And let's say you have a day job and a family and you're a little busy, so your time is scarce and you don't want to get stressed out. So I would say start hiring people from a place like Upwork or another similar area. And you can just start with like one or two writers. I think it's really important to have very clear like style guidelines and like an onboarding document. And I didn't check with you, Sarah or Brandon, about sharing any of my templates, but I make these freely available. So if we're able to, I can give you the link and people could sign up for the email list and get all these templates. But essentially, if you can hire someone and run through your specific operating procedures after you perhaps layer on starting from another template, then you can get feedback from your freelancers. So I think this is really important. We may document what we think is a really good job aid, but if you give it to your freelancer and they can't make sense of it, or there's something confusing, or something that was really clear to you is not clear to anyone else, there's a problem and you need to fix it. So I always encourage my freelancers to give me feedback. It was a Google Doc, and I gave them right to comment on there. So if they had any questions or if something was unclear, I would tell them that they should just leave a comment and I'll fix it and I'll clean it up. So doing that a few times, you'll end up with a really tight document, because every time a new person takes a look at it, they may have a question and then you could fix it. So you just get this great continuous improvement sort of approach, and you end up with kind of a bulletproof document that is a really good job aid. And over time, you'll get fewer and fewer pieces of feedback and questions. And then you could just send it to a new freelancer and they'll know exactly what to do. So once you have that in place, then you can sort of scale it out and hire more people. Now, one thing I like to do so that I can get out of the weeds a little bit is to promote one of the writers to sort of an editor or a content manager type role. Now, for me, that meant drafting a post in WordPress, maybe getting some images, adding internal links, external links, and making sure the subheadings and other formatting were to the specs that we want them to be. So when you promote from within, you already know that that person can do a good job. They know what you're looking for. And there's already some built-in trust, which is great. The other good part is a lot of times these writers get bored just continually churning out more writing. So if you give them sort of a higher level role, they're going to be happy to do it. They will enjoy the change of pace. And, they're probably going to still be writing either for you or someone else, but they'll be able to get some variety, because day in, day out, writing 1,000 or 3,000 words or whatever they're doing, it gets a little boring. Changing the pace is a really good way to keep someone on your team, and you're sort of rewarding the people that are doing a good job. So I'm going to pause for a second and see if you have follow-up questions.
Yeah, that makes total sense as well. And I guess, ultimately falling back on military terms, you're creating a chain of command within your business, and having that chain of command, or having the opportunity for them to move up in the business, gives them that motivation, right? So they're not feeling like they're doing this, in the trench work every single day, but they're working towards that goal of moving up in the company, right?
Yep. And I can go into a little more detail if you want for sort of the structure of the team.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sure.
Why don't you break that down for us as well? Kind of the structure, how you go about, and maybe even just promoting these freelancers as well, and the time frame, I guess, they would fall into that.
Okay. Yeah. So for the time frame, it's really like how fast you want to build the team as far as the promotion. So I would say, like, at a minimum, I'd probably, just me personally, would want to work with someone for at least a month or so and have them write several pieces before I would try to promote them, just again for the built-in trust and to give them more of a chance to get feedback from you and to work together in general. And other times I've had, people work for me for several months before there was an opportunity to promote them. Now, typically I would pay on a per word basis, sort of a fixed project price for any piece that someone's writing. Now, when you promote them to an editor role or a content manager type role, you don't know how long it's going to take. It may take them a long time to edit a piece if it is poorly written or there's a lot of mistakes or something like that, or if it's just longer. So whenever I have someone do a job like that, like the editor, I switch them over to an hourly rate. And, depending on where you're hiring someone from, you may need to pay them more or less. And that's something, that you'll have to have for your individual budget. But I found high quality folks for $10 to $20 per hour. And that was a competitive rate for the flexibility that I often have. Now, I like to have, pods, like groups working together. So maybe there would be 5 writers and 1 content manager, and then I would have another group roughly the same size. For me, that ends up being a pretty good size. So you're able to spawn up another team and have teams working on maybe different sites or different content clusters on your site, or however you want to organize it. But then you could sort of spawn up teams. And once you have these templates, and once you have a good onboarding process, you'll be able to spawn up those teams much more quickly. And you could even promote a writer from one of the other groups to be the editor in a new group. So you could hire all fresh new writers. So in that way, I was able to grow teams really quickly, and I was able to be flexible so that I could, disband a group really quickly, and I wouldn't have to have a big team overall. I've never had full-time employees. I've only, used these sort of strategies to spawn up teams quickly for as long as I want to do the sprint of work, and then I can ramp it back down. So it gives me tons of flexibility, one of the most important things for me.
That's awesome. We talk to so many people who just in the industry who really struggle with this idea of building teams. Like, first and foremost, they can't seem to find the talent. But I like that your approach has solved the next piece of the puzzle, which is retaining that talent and making sure that you have a proper team that wants to stick with you. And I love that you sort of give them a place to go. You have them able to scale up, and that way you're refreshing your ranks all the time to make sure that, new writers are coming in and things keep growing. It's a very powerful approach. I think a lot of people just stop at, okay, found a few freelancers, they do my work okay, and that's it, but they're not really thinking long term. So that's pretty cool. I know that you're a person who's super passionate about productivity, at least according to your site you are. So I was wondering, what productivity hack excites you the most, and what have you found to make the biggest impact?
I wish I had like a sexier answer, but these are just like boring things that we probably know we should do. So number one is to think about the one or two highest priorities for the day and just really focus on those, and don't get distracted with a really long to-do list that has 20 or 30 items. You're never going to get it done that day. And when you just focus on one or two things and you ignore everything else, you end up in a spot where you're getting those really important things done and you're ignoring a lot of the noise, like the countless emails that we may get. Actually, just to be really specific, setting up this interview, which I'm so glad that we were able to do, I had several emails from some of the folks on your team and, with you guys, and it took me a long time to get back. And it's embarrassing a little bit. I wish I replied back a little bit sooner. We had it set up sooner, but you were patient, which I appreciate. But I ignore email sometimes because there's some other things that are way more important for me to get back to, or just my priorities are a little different. Sometimes I want to go out and hike and not answer all the emails that I get. So that's number one, just a few number of items that you are working on and just really focusing. And then other side of the coin is to eliminate distractions. So, get your phone further away, like turn off the notifications, close your email, like whatever the distractions are for you. Everyone's a little bit different, but if you can get rid of those distractions, whatever they may be, it could be your work environment and maybe you need to go to a quieter place. But if you could just do those couple things, your productivity is going to be fantastic. I mean, I can work fewer hours per day and per week using those approaches. And really, I mean, we do want to get as much done as possible. At the same time, for me, flexibility and time away from my computer is really important. So that's what I've done with the productivity. So while I'm working, I think I'm getting more done than I used to. And I'm not sitting in front of the computer nearly as much. And I'm much happier for it.
I think that's a powerful approach. I get it. Like, you didn't get into the affiliate marketing space and start your own projects to be tied to your computer all day. And I think it's almost, I'd suppose, the living lie that a lot of entrepreneurs get trapped into, which is like they left the 9 to 5 to be free. And then once they develop their project to become free, all of a sudden they have the same habit that keep them tied to the project. Sometimes it's more than, optimizing the work itself as much as it is optimizing your life to actually be able to step away, take those hikes, be able to say, hey, I can't do email for a while. I've got other things going on. I appreciate that reminder. I know I'm juggling a lot of things at the moment, a lot of different emails and Slack messages, man, that being able to minimize those distractions, it's always a really nice reminder. Because obviously, like you said, to be able to work less, spend less time at your computer and be better for it, I think we all need to take that into stride.
Yeah. And actually, I'm here to learn too. Either of you, have any productivity tips? What's your number one tip?
Right now, I'm reading Atomic Habits, and I'm not done with the book. I mean, I know that everybody's read that book, and as they should. But I think the recent chapter I was on was making habit formation easy. And so I think to your point about it's kind of like making things easy ties in with minimizing distractions. And as you were saying, I was thinking to myself, I could probably create more of a distraction-free workspace. For me, one big thing this year is I started meditating every day, and now I'm 150 plus days in, which is amazing. To me, is the most revolutionary thing in the world. But one way I did it was having the meditation mat out. And in the mornings, I know exactly when I'm going to go and I'm going to sit on it and what I'm going to do. And that according to Atomic Habits, that's called a cue. So I created the cue, and therefore I stick to the habit. And for me, that's made a world of a difference.
Nice.
Yeah, I love that answer, Sarah. You're focusing on your mental health, and I really aspire to do the same. I hope I can get into some meditation a little bit more. And I guess more for me on leaning more towards the physical production side. So eating proper meals and getting proper rest. I've always been kind of, I guess from my early days in the military, I've always been an early riser. But now that I'm actually eating a healthy breakfast in the morning, that's kind of setting that pace for me for the rest of the day. And I feel energized to crunch out 6, 7, 8 hours, at a time. And making sure that I'm taking my health into consideration as well, too, has definitely boosted my productivity, I would say, across the board.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And I thought of one more as you guys were talking there. And I've been doing intermittent fasting for the last few years, most days, not every day. And I'm not super strict with it, but I know if I have pancakes or something for breakfast or even cereal, I'm going to be garbage as far as thinking. So a lot of times I don't eat anything until lunchtime, and that could be 11:30 or it could be 2 in the afternoon. But if I can get my best work done early in the morning, and I'll exercise fasting or go for a run or whatever, over time I've gotten much better, but I feel awesome when I'm fasting.
Oh, that's
cool. Yeah,
cool.
That's something I've also heard from several people. I know Matt Diggity, we had spoken with him not too long ago, and I know he tried that out as well too, and it seemed to work really well for him, and something I've been meaning to research more. I mean, I feel like I've done intermittent fasting when I'm really in a crunch with work, but I'm sure I'm probably not doing it correctly. So
yeah, and one is, you guys are travelers, one sort of ninja hack that comes out of it is when you're hungry at the airport, I used to get really grouchy like a little kid or whatever, you can't get the food at the right time and it's hot or whatever. And yeah, I can power through traveling. So my wife is much happier that I'm not like a little baby to travel with.
I feel you on that front. Yeah, I've tried intermittent fasting before. I've been on and off with it. Some periods it really does work for me and others it doesn't, but it's something I would definitely like to get back into. Morning walks. It sounds like you go for a hike or a run in the morning, and that's something that I'd love.
Well, you have to if you live in Colorado. And do you also own a mountain bike as well?
I have a mountain bike. I'm not a good biker. I have one. You got to have one.
Yeah. That was one thing when I was stuck in quarantine at my parents' house and right near you, actually near Denver. That's kind of what the locals told me. They said, you don't live in Colorado unless your mountain bike costs more than your car, right? So,
I love it.
That was
That's
one of
awesome.
the first purchases I got there. Yep.
Right on.
Switching gears here, but just wanted to talk about look towards the future some. And so we usually wrap the show up and ask people about that. And this is, I'll make it clear, it's kind of like your best guess. Nothing's set in stone here. But what do you think the future looks like for affiliate marketing? And what do you think it's going to take to stay ahead?
I think hopefully people will start working with some other affiliate programs outside of Amazon. And I think one of the best ways to do that, the area that I really love, and it's kind of neglected in, certain spaces, and that is digital products. So we're talking software, we're talking, I guess online courses would count as that too. If you could be an affiliate for those types of products, many times those payouts and those commission rates are going to be much higher than any physical product just because the margins are so high on digital products. So I think as far as staying ahead, having sort of a diverse set of income streams is going to be great. So, like I said, Amazon will probably be a part. If you happen to have sort of like a niche where there's some boutique suppliers where maybe they're not even on Amazon or they really protect their brand, it'll be great to work with those types of companies and just sort of expand. And as I mentioned before, if you have traffic on your site, if you are ranking for certain terms, you have leverage. You can go and look and see who's running ads in your niche. And if you can make a deal with them, I mean, if they're running ads, you know that they already have a marketing budget and they're paying to get in front of their audience. If you have the audience, you potentially can make a deal with them. Now, that may take some phone calls, it may take some negotiation, and it may not be easy. But that's sort of how to separate yourself from everyone else, is to do those things that may be unclear. Maybe you have no clue how to do it and you're going to screw up a few times, but you're definitely going to learn something out of it. Now, the other area, I mean, this question is about affiliate marketing, but you can run display ads, you can have direct deals with companies, and I think that's a valid way to run your business and earn money. Now, the other portion is, I mean, we're talking mostly about the written word, but I have 2 podcasts. I love podcasting, and I have a YouTube channel. And I would say if you have some desire to get into those other areas, absolutely do it. Again, it's another thing that's hard to do. If you don't have those skills, you can learn them. You don't need to have a background in audio engineering or video or filmmaking or anything like that. I had none of those skills. Look at me now, right? If I could do it, I think anyone can probably figure it out through persistence and just trying to get better over time. It'll be hard, and there's nothing in this that's necessarily easy, but nothing's impossible. And you can find examples in your niche. You could find other people that have done it, and you could look at some of their early work and realize, hey, this is just part of the process here. So I think overall it's just to be diversified in different areas. Monetization, top of the funnel, thinking about, if you're just going to have a blog or if you're going to have some other outlets as well.
Absolutely. Yes, I guess stepping out of your comfort zone, right? Because you really never really know what might work for your business unless you try it. And as you had mentioned, if you notice the competition or you notice your competitors are doing something, why not try to compete on that platform as well, or maybe even that diversified channel? It's only going to broaden your traffic reach, right? And ultimately, I guess you can learn everything. The power of online is you can learn almost everything online nowadays, and there's a course or maybe even free content such as your YouTube channel out there that can teach you these things. So yeah, really solid advice there, and really amazing call as well too. Really great insight, great information throughout the call. And usually what we like to do to wrap these calls up is finish them up with a few rapid fire questions. So I'm not really sure if this can be deduced to a simple rapid fire answer, but I'll go ahead and ask it anyways and let you take the wheel from there. So what would you say is your biggest piece of advice for our listeners that are looking to scale their affiliate business successfully?
I think it'll be a little redundant since I mentioned some of the pieces before, but I think understanding what is working well so that you can scale that part of it. And I'm not saying that you should ignore the parts that aren't working as well, but when you're scaling, you want to make sure you're scaling the part that is hitting at all cylinders, firing at all cylinders, that is. And then the other piece is, don't make the mistake of trying to scale too soon. I think if you try to do that, you're going to end up being a little frustrated. You couldn't power your way through it. You could brute force out of that situation, but potentially will be a lot more frustrating. And there will be a lot more waste in the system if you are scaling before you've, optimized.
Excellent. Okay. Great advice. Okay. So what tools or resources do you have that could help online business owners grow their business?
One of my favorite tools from a project management standpoint is Trello. I know a lot of people use it, and I use it for all of my content planning needs. So it's easy enough for a new freelancer to see how you have your board set up, or you could show them how you have things set up in, 5 to 10 minutes, very easy to use. And I've had, many dozens of freelancers work with me using Trello over the years. So I love that. And I will plug one of my favorite podcasts, the TMBA, Tropical MBA podcast. I've listened to that since I got started online. I think I went all the way back to the very beginning of their back catalog. And it's one of the few shows that I've stuck with over the years. Really enjoyed it. I think they're friends of the show and Empire Flippers in general. So those are the couple that I'll point out. And I will mention, I do have several templates, all the tools and systems that I use for my business, including, some of the onboarding documents that I use to hire writers and other freelancers.
Oh, that's awesome. I like Tropical MBA as well. I think I started listening to it years before I found Empire Flippers. And I guess through the chain of events of Listen Up podcast is eventually how I found Empire Flippers in this job. So kind of, I have a lot to be thankful for that, that podcast. It's a good one. So final question here. What would you say has been your funniest moment while working as an online entrepreneur?
Gosh, so I was hoping I would actually think of a funny ha-ha thing that I could tell you. I will tell you, I've had some great laughs with mastermind groups. So I've been part of several mastermind groups over the years, and it's great to have those conversations with people that know what the hell you're talking about and they're working in the same area and they can relate. So I don't have any specific little funny things, but I know I've had some good laughs and made some really good friends over the years. Maybe not funny ha-ha thing is just, looking back and thinking, wow, I really thought I was a genius that first month that I hit $6,000. I thought everything figured out. And as I've learned more and more over the years, I realized how much I don't know. And now I feel like I just have so much to learn from everyone, even though technically I should be filled with knowledge at this point. And I know a few things. I realize that. But when I think back how stupid I was at the beginning, it's amazing because I thought I had everything figured out.
I love that. I think that's solid insight. I mean, that's true wisdom, right? Is the acknowledgement that you have more to learn. So that's cool. Well, this has been a lot of fun having you on and just kind of walking through your story, getting to know you a little bit better and learning a lot along the way. So very much appreciate your time and thank you for coming on with us today.
Thanks so much. It was my pleasure.
Awesome. Hey everyone, now that we wrapped up this episode and learned about scaling affiliate sites using techniques from an expert in the space, we wanted to cover a common question about buying and selling online businesses. So this week's question is, say that I have a business to sell. Would it be smarter to price it really high at first and then lower the price if it doesn't sell right away? Or would it be smarter to price it fair like your valuation tool suggests? So this is a really great question. And what they're referring to as far as the fair is we offer our sellers two different types of valuations for their business that we call the typical and the absolute range. So the absolute range can go higher or lower than our typical range, but the typical valuation is what our data shows is the best price for the smoothest transaction based on the listing price that other similar assets are being acquired for. So some sellers decide they'd like to go with a multiple that is higher than our typical range, which we will then advise them to expect a longer sales process in doing so. Right now, because we are still in a seller's market, it's not a terrible idea to go with our absolute valuation as long as you're not in a hurry to make an exit or as long as you don't need the cash right away. So this is something to keep in mind that if you do decide to go with our typical valuation, you can expect the smoothest transaction. But if you decide you'd like to wait out for a larger listing price, you can always go with the absolute range. Again, as long as you're not in a hurry to make an exit.
All right, everyone. That wraps up this week's episode of the Opportunity Podcast. We hope you've gained some valuable insight on the opportunities that digital acquisitions offer. Click the link in the description or visit empireflippers.com/marketplace to learn more about listings currently live on our platform. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to leave a review and subscribe to this podcast for more great content that will be released very soon. Thanks again for tuning into the Opportunity Podcast, and we're looking forward to having you back next week and hear from your fellow entrepreneurs and online experts.